Alrighty. So, first lesson of phase four, and we're going to talk about Flask, an intro to Flask. Hopefully, y'all have gotten a little bit of taste of Flask so far, going through the material in Canvas. Um, I'm going to run through some of the basic stuff, talk a little bit about the stuff around it. So, hopefully, it's not just technical review, and have a nice little sample application to run through. So we'll take a look at what that looks like. As usual, if you have any questions about anything at all, or want me to talk more about something, or don't understand something, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. So, before I jump in, does anyone have any specific stuff they want to talk about or get more info about before we jump into the talking a lot part?
I had I just had two labs I was kind of stuck on.
Hmm?
The first one was on the Flask route views lab.
You're coming in and out there.
The first one was on the Flask routing and views lab. Um, I couldn't wrap my head around like two of the deliverables on that one. I don't know if you have pulled it up, but it's one of them is for a count view, and the other one was for a math view. And
Hmm.
I just couldn't figure out how to get those working.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I was just looking at it this morning, and I have opinions. Though those are not great routes for any kind of web app that we're going to be building. They're just kind of there to demonstrate, like, here's how routes work. So if you can't like super get them, that's totally okay. As long as you get the general idea, I think you're going to be there. We'll talk about routes a little bit here. So if there's anything in there that um, and talk about the hits, kind of what you want, we can talk about that. Otherwise, we can address it after. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Anyone else? Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And yeah, I'll just share the whole thing. Let's see. Controls. Awesome. So we are gonna be looking at Flask, like I said. So let me talk about what Flask is first. You probably have some idea by now. Flask is a web application server. Uh, what that means is, so without anything at all, you can write a Python script that will listen to an HTTP port and get a message, and you can send messages back to that. And you can just use plain old Python to do that if you like. Much like how SQL Alchemy kind of built on the standard, just like talking with SQL kind of stuff. Uh, Application frameworks like Flask and many others encapsulate some of that work for you. As you can imagine, a lot of the stuff that you might be doing in an application like this is going to be repetitive. So, because we are programmers, we made stuff to alleviate some of that repetition. So, what does that mean for us? That means that using this Flask library, we can stand up a little web server that takes requests and sends responses. And Flask in particular is well suited to doing RESTful applications, meaning that we're going to be doing using the methods get, posts, patch, delete to do our CRUD operations. And we're kind of using the application server as a kind of intermediary to our database. It'll be making hits to our database, whatever that database looks like, whether it's SQL or a flat file or hitting the Amazon service or something. Uh, Whatever that is, our application is going to be taking a certain set of requests that we define and translating that into our SQL stuff, adding, changing, reading, bringing it back, and sending back the appropriate responses. Uh, and again, Flask is all Flask is just a bunch of functions and methods and decorators that make that work easier for us. Um, there's a there's a bit in there about this WSGI stuff or the workzug stuff. You could that's not really important, I don't think. Basically, that's just like, hey, an application server needs to talk to the web, and here's a way to do it. And you'll never ever need to touch it unless you're like building your own application framework or something, or doing like server administration or something, which you might do. Who knows? But you can learn it at that point. For now, just making stuff go. We are just going to talk about uh, what we need to set up to make Flask work for us here, and the basics of setting up our database stuff to talk to it. So, um, the the way this is set up, it kind of makes a lot of assumptions about what we're doing and what we're doing in what order. I'm going to, I want to walk through it. I'm going to talk about Flask first. So, um, let's do this. So, Flask again is a library. You can import it with pip through your pip file there, and we can see we have Flask, and it's probably a close to current version. Um, we're also getting a couple other things in here. We're using Flask SQL Alchemy, and that is like we're using the SQL Alchemy library by itself to talk to stuff in our Phase 3 projects. This is basically a wrapper around that stuff that has an easier interface to Flask. So we'll be doing a lot of the same stuff. Some of it is going to have slightly different syntax, and hopefully might make it just a tiny little bit smoother. Opinions differ. And again, this is one way to do it. There are many ways to hit a database through Flask or other application libraries. And then Flask Migrate is what it says. It's going to be just another kind of intermediary to doing migrations through Flask instead of through straight up SQL Alchemy. Cool. So I did my install there, I think. Yeah, we did. So I'm going to just go ahead and let's just set up Flask first up. Talk about that. I'm not going to worry about that. Cool. So since it's a library, we need to import it. So I'm just going to go ahead and import all the stuff we need. So from Flask, ooh, fingers are going to give me a hard time today. We're going to import a few things. We're going to import Flask itself, and that is that's basically we're going to get an instance of that to be our application, and we're going to build stuff off of that. We're also going to grab JSONify, which is going to help us turn our objects into a JSON string, kind of like JSON Stringify did for us in JavaScript. And I'm going to grab there we go, make response. And that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting of, it's not that heavy, but it's boring lifting of creating an actual response to send back. And I'm going to go ahead and also grab, oh yeah, there it is right there. Yeah, all that stuff. We're going to grab that. So from Flask migrate, hey, there we go. I'm going to grab migrate, man, migrate. And we are going to need to grab stuff from models. I'm going to type that in, but I'm not going to, I'll comment it out, I think. We'll talk about it in just a moment. So from models. And it's going to be, we're doing productions here, right? Yeah, cool. So we're not going to use that immediately, so I'm not going to worry about it. Cool. So like I said, Flask is the capital F Flask is going to be our it's a class. So we're going to create a instance of that class, and that's going to be our Flask application. And the way we do that is with any other object, we're going to say, and we're going to call it app because convention, but it's our application. And we're going to say is a Flask. We're going to get a new Flask object, and we're going to pass it in this underscore name underscore. So what that is when it's kind of like yeah, there we go. When we run this as a script, it's going to be main. If we give it somewhere else, it's going to be called something else. Right now, it doesn't really matter what it's called. It just needs a unique name. And since it's going to be unique here, we're just going to use that. So, but it could, am I lying? I don't know. Maybe we'll test that later. I'm pretty sure that could be any unique string, but for right now, we're going to call it that. And we're going to need to do a couple other things to get this set up. So we're going to need to do a config. And we want to set up, so config is a dictionary, and a dictionary needs keys. And this key is going to be SQL, SQ, uppercase, SQL, database URI. And this is going to be kind of like when we did set up the database config in straight up SQL Alchemy. This is going to be the same kind of thing. It's just wrapped inside of Flask. And so that's going to be our SQLite, lowercase, SQL Lite, 1, 2, 3, at B. So that's going to be where our database lives, basically. And let's see, we want to, oh yeah, there's a one little weird config that you need right now. I don't actually know if you need this anymore. I think more recent versions you don't need it, but I'm gonna put it there anyway, just in case. That's a real picky little SQL Alchemy track modifications. And this is just like a legacy thing that you really don't need to worry about. I don't even think we need to do this, but
Yeah, you don't have to.
yeah,
Mine didn't get an error when I didn't use it.
yeah. I think there's kind of edge conditions in older versions of Flask that you need to do that. Um, I'm going to comment it out and see if it works without it. I think it's going to work without it, but yeah, uh, yeah. I don't know why we have that there. It's weird. Oh, and all this is down here too. I should just look down here and copy paste this. um, and we're not going to migrate stuff yet because we don't have migration to do yet. But we are going to finish. I'm just going to do it there. Yeah. So I'm going to finish up setting up the app with, um, and we didn't have the DB yet. Yeah, so I'm going to do that later when we set the database. Um, Gosh, what I want to do it. No, I'm just going to set it this way. We'll talk about the database when we get to it. Great. So we're not going to worry about the migrations yet. We're not going to worry about seeds yet. Um, so we're just going to set up like the most minimal server we can here. I'm not going to do that yet. So we are going to need Flask because that is our application. I don't think we're going to need JSONify yet, but we will need to use, we don't even need to make response because we're just going to do a basic thing. So the most basic thing we can do here, uh, yeah. So the most basic thing we can do here is set up a route that just like says, what's up when we look at the root of it. Um, yeah, I'm not doing that. So Flask uses decorators to set up routes here. What's a route? Just like in our JSON server, a route is, in our case, RESTful routes are going to be a resource. That's going to be our noun. It's going to be hit with a method. That's going to be our verb. And there might be some bits and pieces after it that specify like which resource we want, or if we want to do something to a different resource inside that. But for right now, let's just hit the root route and root route, root route. We're gonna hit the root route, and so we're gonna create with our app, and that's there. This is the decorator. Decorator again, just a function that wraps the function that comes after it with some extra stuff. In this case, our app has these decorators available to it, and it is called our UTE. And basically all it does is take a route that we want to hit. In this case, it's going to be slash when it is going to be hitting resources. We'll put the name of that resource there. Um, we'll talk all about that in just a moment. Um, and so since the decorator needs a function to wrap, we're going to write our function here, and we'll call it index. Yeah. And I don't think it needs any arguments here. And we're just going to return, what's up? What's up? There we go. And so we're not like creating a formal response object or anything yet. Basically, we're just going to be returning a string. It's the easiest thing you do. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So we do need to start up our app. Um, yeah, yeah, we could do that. So there are several ways to do a thing, as always. One way is to, if we want to use Flask run, um, let's take a look what that looks like first. So we're going to do these things. We're going to say, hey, here is our, I'm going to go to server. Just like it says there, look at that. We're going to go to the server. We're going to say, hey, we're going to set our Flask underscore app to our appy there. We're going to set a port, and we're going to use 5555. You can use any port up there. We are not going to do any of the database stuff, but this is what it needs to say Flask run. Yeah. So in theory, we should be able to say Flask run here, and it should work. And I'm about 75% confident that it will. Let's see. Look at that. We need to do our Pippin or Pyan run. Nope. Pippin. Run. There we go. That's what I want. Okay. So here we are. We are serving this application. So it's basically just going to, and kind of what it does is it's kind of the inside out of what you would kind of expect. So it's not Flask, or I guess you would expect if you worked with other things. It's not Flask taking in the code that we've written and using that to run it. We are running the code that we have here, and we're basically saying, hey, Flask, use that. And then inside, we're making an instance of Flask and using it there. And I'll show you why that's important or useful later on, or well, very soon. So it's running that Flask there, and it is running on that port. So that's localhost 5555, just like we said there. And let's see what that looks like, if anything. Hey, look at that. So it did the thing. We went to our root route, and we got our root, and our we hit our route, and it ran this function. So again, we said we made an application using Flask. We told that to, when we hit that route, use this function. And this function is literally just the simplest thing and returning a string. It's asking a get. Oh yeah, here we are. And we can, this is really handy for debugging down here. When there's errors, we'll see that on our console. And so we are saying get slash, and that is our the route that we're hitting, the root route. And 200 there says that it's all good. So we got a response, and great. We did the thing. We've made a flash, or not Flask, a Flask. I was a Flash developer for a very long time, but that's no longer a thing. We made our first Flask application to do the super simplest thing. We don't even need that right now, right? Because we're not using a database at all. So really, all we need to do is from Flask import Flask app equals Flask something, and then make a root and return something, and that's it. Um, in the browser, it's hitting that. It's sending the string, basically like sending that exact string to it. And Flask knows to, when you get that, run this function, and whatever we're returning, that's what's going to be sent back. Yeah, so that's the deadest, simplest Flask server you can make. What questions do we have, if any, up to this point? Awesome. Cool. I'm going to test my theory here. We're going to I'm sure I could look up the documentation, but it's more fun this way. Instead of just putting name here, I'm going to put, whatever. And so, to my understanding, which may be flawed, this is just a unique identifier that says that, if for some reason you have more than one Flask application in your program, that will distinguish them. But let's see if that still works. Um, I'm like 50-50 on this. I don't know. That looks like it still works. So I think I'm right. Yep, still does it. Got the request, does it? Yeah. So um, this just needs to be a string of whatever. By convention, it is the name of the thing you're doing. I don't think it really matters. So uh, free yourself on that front. Cool, science. So I want to talk quickly about the other way we would do it. Um, so if we want to run this as an application, which there are uh, reasons you would want to do it, including hosting this somewhere else, you need to either tell your hosting provider to do the PyAmber run Flask run, or say, hey, this is just my program I'm going to run here. So if I want to just run it with just Python at Py, and not even Python, because I'm saying user bin env Python up here. So we know it's a Python script, Python 3. And so this is the bit that you've seen before in your CLI projects. This basically means, hey, if you're running this file, do the stuff below it. And all it's doing is basically the same thing that run Flask run is doing. We're just saying, hey, application run, and it's going to be on this port, and debug is true, which is what we want. So now I've got that, I'm going to actually, so if we look at the permissions on app, we can see it's just read and write for us and read for everyone else. We can add the execute permission to that. So now if we look at it again, we have our little X's. Anyone can run that. And so we should just be able to say app.py, no module named Flask. What do you mean no module? Oh, because we need to do py. I should just do the shell. There we go. Nope, still hates it. Okay. Hates it. It just hates it. What do we got here? What did I do?
And usually get mine to run if I just do like Python and the app, the py.
Yeah, I was hoping that this would do that, but I guess it's not going to. Let's try that again. No such command run. Oh, pipenv, not pyenv. Let me just get in the shell here. There we go. That's what I want. I wish they had named those more distinctly. Okay, now we should just be able to do app.py. Come on, man. We need to go in the server again. Okay, cool. Now let's do it. Let's get it. 80% certain. Yeah, look at that. Cool. So if you're in the right environment, in the right server, it's just going to run from the inside here. And check it out. It's running from a different port. So of course, this is not going to work because we closed that. But if we change the port to 5000, hey, what's up? That's going to work for us. And there's our request. Um, this is generally how I like to do it. But again, whatever works, works. Rule one. Um, cool. And this is probably how I will continue to do it because this is boring to do every time. We will need to do our migrations when we set stuff up. So let's talk more about routes before we get into our database stuff. Hey, look at that. Hey, you can tell that someone copied that from the Ruby Curriculum. That's not the file. That wasn't me. Cool. We did that. We did that. Great. Let's take a look at what kinds of routes we can do. So we can do a root route. We can give it a noun for our resource there. So that means that if we run it, and this should give us nothing. Yeah, give us a 404 because it's not found. Favicon, again, for those who don't know, is the little icon that goes up here in the left-hand corner. It's not important that it's not there, so don't worry about it. And so we're still getting our 404 for the root here, root route. But if we do production, hey, there's our production. And in fact, let's make it look a little bit more, uh, yeah, like that. Hey, here's our production. Production. So this is the route. Oh, and check it out. It auto restarts when you change it. Fantastic. Um, so we are going to make a production model. We're going to hit it through this route restfully, and we're going to hit it through that. So normally in a RESTful paradigm here, this would get us a list of our productions. And if we wanted to hit a specific production, Hamlet or whatever, that's not going to be found because we haven't set up a route for that. So the way we do that is we're going to set up name, a production slash name. So this is a dynamic route. Basically, you give it your resource, and we can get it. This will usually be by ID, but if you want to set up like a search or something like that, you can definitely you know, do like that. Search by name. In this case, we're just going to throw the name in there and don't have to do anything. Yeah. So when we get an ID or whatever it is, oh, we have to say what it is. Weird. Okay. Um, so we need to tell it what it's expecting. Fantastic. So it's going to be expecting a string. And then in our route thing here, we're going to match that. So we're going to say, hey, in our route, we want to grab a string that is the title. We're going to pass that title into the production, and then we can use it just like any other Python variable. So I'm going to fix this up here and put it like that, and put it like that. Nope. Okay, great. Make me type it. So there's our name. We'll give a name here, and let's go ahead and format a string. And nope, name. I guess title would be better, huh? Uh, boop, boop. Great. So if I did everything right here, which is dubious, this should uh, look for the production route with something afterwards. It'll take that something and plop it into this function, and then we can do whatever we want with this function. In this case, we're just going to spit it back out. Hey, look at that. And we can do, look at this. All this stuff. A million plays we can put in. So cool. That is how regular get routes and dynamic get routes work. Um, yeah, I think that's as far as we'll go before hitting database stuff. Any questions about setting up routes for resources or dynamic routes? Just for the matching part, not the implementation part. And this might hit a little bit on John's question, I think. Uh, what was it? This part you were having trouble with, or the like the implementation of the stuff?
It was more the implementation. I was just like confused on like well, like how to achieve that deliverable. But
Do you remember which deliverable it was?
yeah, it says a count view should take one parameter, an integer. It should display all numbers in the range of that parameter on separate lines. Its URL should be of the format /count/parameter.
So if we did like count, because you probably get int, uh, whatever they wanted here, count. So then we do our, we can call something else. Uh, up to, and I believe that will work. So let's see what that looks like. 54. Great. So that's how we would get that. So you were able to get this far, right?
Yeah,
And so then it wants to um, basically construct some HTML that has that counts from like one up to that number.
yeah.
Yeah, so we could do something like result equals empty string, um, and then for C in how does Python do ranges? Is it just one? Is it one dot dot thing? There's a three. Does
I
Python
think there's like a range. There's like a range.
range?
Yeah, it's just like range then with your number variable. Like I had to Google it, but like I guess range just automatically starts at
Yeah,
0 and goes to your parameter number.
cool. Yeah, still have Ruby has a lot better stuff for that. But cool. So in here we would say result equals result plus we can add a let's format it there, add a paragraph, and just put C in there. And so we're just constructing the string, and we can return our result. I don't know if that's going to work. Let's find out. Hey, look at that. It does. Yeah. So basically, once you get to this part, it's just Python. It's just putting stuff together, and we just return it. And in this case, we're just returning strings, so it's as easy as possible. But yeah, at this point, it's just Python. You can do whatever you want with it and return what you want to see on the page. Does that kind of help you out a little bit?
Yeah, it looks a lot more simpler than what I tried. Well, I'm gonna plug in. I'm gonna run this PyTest real quick.
Cool. Yeah, and that's kind of the it's an interesting thing that happens when we start doing, I mean, when we start doing React, when we start doing Flask, when we start using these frameworks, there's always like the examples and tutorials always have sort of like a specific kind of thing that they always do. But you don't have to do that. Uh, we're writing a function here. We can just return count, right? We're just writing a function and type error. Yeah, because it's int whatever. Um, there we go. So we're basically all we're doing is getting a parameter from the URL here, and then passing it to a Python function, and we can write whatever Python we want here. It doesn't have to be hitting a database. It doesn't have to be doing something in a particular format. It just has to be returning a string basically that will be put on the page, and whatever that looks like for you. So my it's not a challenge, but I encourage you to play around with that, especially when Project Week comes around, because you'll be definitely sort of burned into the do the thing this way, and then take a parameter this way, and then do a database call this way, and then return it this way, and that's going to be good for pattern matching exercises and stuff. But I mean, Python is just a Turing complete language that you can do whatever you want in. So I encourage you to play around with it and get nuts with it. That's what the web is for. Cool. Any other questions up to this point?
So sorry, just to harp on just because like I want to know what the solution is, right? But so I plugged in something similar to the code you showed earlier,
Mhm.
and now it's giving me it's displaying the actual paragraph P's on there.
Huh. So it's like showing the HTML as text.
Yeah,
Interesting. If you just do something simple, just like like give it a what's up there, does it return the HTML or does it?
let me try it.
I don't know if I could do that on purpose.
Yeah, it's for sure the HTML.
Weird. Um, yeah, I don't know how you would do that if you were intending to do that. It's interesting. We can take a look at it a little bit later. Um, I wonder what it, yeah, weird. I can't think of how you would even do that. Interesting. I might look at the source. I might look at the network request in the network panel to make sure that everything's cool there. Look at your look at your responses here. Um, but yeah, just find places that might be different and poke at those places.
Or I'll mess with it a little more.
Cool. What other questions do we have about setting up routes with parameters?
Um, thinking forward, right? Like this just takes a route from something that we like manually typed into the URL. Is this where we would be like, fetching different stuff to dictate the route and stuff like that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll set up our database stuff here and show off a Git or two. But tomorrow or the next day, we'll talk more about like the whole everything we want to do. But yeah, basically, we're going to be using the SQL Alchemy uh, stuff that's in Flask to do all that stuff.
Okay.
Short answer, yes. Anything else before we move on? Cool, cool. Cool. I'll do that. Yeah, let's do that. Cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at our database stuff. I'm just going to get rid of that. We don't need that. Let me uncomment those things. Um, yeah, great. Um, cool. So let's take a look at our. I guess we want to start with our models, right? So let's take a look at our models file. So this is where, oh, there's more instructions here. This is where we are going to, and let me make sure that's closed out. Great. This is where we're going to, just like we did before in our last phase and our projects and whatnot, set up our model, both our class and the database table that it's going to be reading from. So yeah, look at all that stuff. So we are going to, actually, let me look. Yeah. View MVC. We know how models work. The classes that hook up to our ORM. This is if we are talking about MVC, which we don't really talk about that much anymore now that we're not using Rails. But basically, MVC is that pattern that we're going to see on every level. It's a little fractal kind of um, in the scope that we're looking at now in the application server. Um, the model is going to literally be our model classes that models are resources. The controller is basically going to be the routes that we hit. Basically, controllers are the actions that we can do, and the view is going to be the HTML that we spit back out. And it doesn't necessarily map completely to a real MVC model, but if you see MVC around, that's basically like the three main parts you're going to find in an application. If you're looking at like the scope of React, your model is going to be your state, your controller is going to be the functions you have hooked up to make things go, and the view is going to be the HTML page that you hit buttons and stuff to make happen. Um, if you're looking at the whole web app, the model would be the database, the controller would be your application layer, and your view would be your front end. So you can like zoom in and zoom out arbitrarily with that. It's not a concrete thing, but it's a useful model to kind of like think about what you're doing. Um, there are concrete specific MVC things, but we don't use those here. Cool. So that said, here is our model. We're just going to have one model representing our productions. We are not going to use straight up SQL Alchemy. As you can see, we're going to be using Flask SQL Alchemy, and we're importing SQL. I wish they'd named that something shorter. SQL Alchemy. I don't need to say 6 syllables every time. Flask SQL Alchemy. Uh, we're going to be using that to do all the stuff we did with regular Squalchemy. I'm just going to say Squalchemy from now on. Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, bloop, did that. So, Squalchemy in Flask Squalchemy is just the wrapper around. So basically, we are using Flask to do all of the setting up tables, doing our migrations, doing our seeds and whatnot. Not our seeds, I don't think, but kind of a little bit. But basically, we are going to say, hey, use use SQL to do our thing. And so that's just a class in the Flask Squalchemy library, and we are getting an instance of that class. Again, could be called anything. We're calling it DB because that's what it is. So now we can use this to go ahead and make our models with. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a class. Oh, and this is what we're importing here. And now we're going to make this. So we are going to make a class. It's going to be called production. And we need to give it that. So it's going to be a subclass, is inheriting from the model class that's sitting on our DB instance, which is an instance of Squelchemy. Cool. Just like our table name, right? Table underscore table name. Yeah. I want to set that up to be capital P Productions. Oh yeah, just like it says there. Look at that. It's got instructions for me. I don't have to make it up. And so it needs to know what the name of the table is, basically. I don't know why it's uppercase here, but it should be, it's whatever. And so we're going to add a bunch of columns. And we're going to have our, we're going to have an ID, and we're going to use the database. Should have that, right? We'll see. We're going to basically use these. I wonder why it's not picking up. We're going to be using all the stuff that's built into the Flask Squelchemy database thing instead of the regular Squelchemy thing, because these are hooked in through Flask, which is going to make it easier for them to interact with our application. So it's basically exactly the same thing, but it's just a different syntax. It's primary key. We're going to make a, what did we do? Make a title, column, string of it. I don't think we need anything there. Budget, that's a lot of stuff. Cool. Fortunately, I have some stuff to copy paste from over here, so I don't have to type it all. Not gonna. We got the title there. Let's do this. Yeah, no reason for me to make my little fingers hurt. Cool. So we are creating title or creating columns for our title, string for our genre, a float, which is a floating point number for our budget, because this distinguishes between floats and integers, strings for our image, director, description, whether it is an ongoing production or not is going to be our Boolean, true or false. And these are, you're basically, you do these every time. I don't know why they're not included by default, but here we are. This is basically saying this record was created at a time, and it'll default to now, and the same thing with the update at. And that's our whole model. That's the whole thing. Oh yeah, let me add the little repper thing. I'm gonna add a nice little convenience thing here to, so when we print out the model, it's gonna give us a nicer description of it. But yeah, that's our whole model. That's the way we're going to define it here. It's not that much different from the regular Squelchemy stuff. It's just using the Flask Squelchemy database classes that are built into that instance there, of course. Great. Let's see if that works. So we did it. Oh, so we need to set our migrations here. That's right. So we need to say, do we? I think what we need to do here. We need to. I don't think we need to do that there. Do that there. Yeah, I guess we do. So when yeah. So migrate is something we're importing from Flask migrate, which is part of Flask, or it's associated with Flask. And we're just going to set up our migrations here. So migrate equals migrate. And we're going to give it our application here. And we're going to give it the database that we set up here. So now those are inexorably tied. And then we can run DB init app from here. So basically, when we start up the server, it's going to do our migrations here, or it's going to have our migrations here. And hey, look at that. We're going to initialize the database part of it, and we're going to pass it our application. So the database thing in Flask Squalchemy knows which application it's associated with. Yeah, I think that's all we need to do there. Migrate. Yeah, great. So let's actually do our migration here. So we don't have a database set up. We are in the right place, I think. Yeah, cool. So we need to do our Flask DB init. I'm in the shell, so hopefully that's all I need to do. Are those all good messages or bad messages? It looks like a good message. Excellent, cool. So it's making our directories over here that has our migrations on our actual instance. There should be an app.db in there, I think. Maybe it doesn't do that until we actually make the thing go. So it's created that. It's created all the migration stuff we need there. And cool, it's using Alembic under the hood. Fantastic. We don't need to worry about that part. So let's go ahead and copy paste this. So we are going to do Flask migrate, Flask DB. So all of these commands are running through Flask. Flask is kind of like your task runner here. If you're using Express with JavaScript, you'd be using Express. If you're using Rails with Ruby, you'd be using Rails. We're using Flask with Python, so we use Flask here. And Flask is just, again, a program that takes these as arguments to do different things with our application. So we are doing a revision on our database. We are auto-generating the tables and stuff here, and we are doing it with the model that we've set up here because we've told it everything that needs to be hooked up in this little thing here. When you make if you are a person who winds up making these often, a lot of this is boilerplate. It's really good to know what does what. So when things break, and they will, you have a better chance of tracking it down. But a lot of this is going to be like boilerplate. You set it up once, you run this stuff once, and then 90% of your time is actually coding. But yeah, so we're just going through now. So we know when it does. Let's see if it actually works. Hey, it did. Cool. And there is our database. Let's pop that open. We need to actually do our migrations with a Flask upgrade. That should run our migrations to the current. Yeah, there we are. So this was generating our migrations. This is actually running the migrations. And we can see here in our SQLite Explorer, there's our AppDB. And if we refresh, there we go, productions table. There's all of our nothing. So we've got all the stuff we set up here. All the columns look good. Happy with that. Fantastic. Let's close that out. Shrink that down. Now we get to seed RB. It's not Ruby anymore. Hey, we did that part. Cool. Yeah, so let's get some data in there. And yeah, cool. So We're going to import all of our stuff. In fact, there's a lot of typing here that I'm not going to type. I am going to copy paste some stuff. Um, I've been in mirrors, and that might be a little bit better. So use that instead. So I'm going to copy paste that and I can, great. Awesome. So here's all the stuff. We are importing our application from app.py. So this is basically so Flask is a really minimal, really lightweight framework. And a lot of the things that we want to use to do actual work, instead of just like making an account and returning it or using it as a weird little calculator thing, we're going to need to hit a database. We need to do, we're going to need to make graphs. We're going to need to, all sorts of stuff, hit other APIs. And Flask itself is super light. So anything we're going to do with it is going to be a little library we're going to import in. And so when we make our Flask application, we're basically plugging in a bunch of things to it. So when we want to do other stuff to it, we only want to use that in another file here, like our seeds or whatever else. We need to import that so that it knows which app it's running on and what all is plugged into it. So in this case, we're just grabbing our app here. We are also grabbing our models from here. And here's where we're going to set up the connection. So init app is when we're hooking up the database to our app again, so we get all that information. And then context. I bet it says, talk about context. Yeah, it does. So there are a couple contexts or scopes to think about when you're doing this. There's a global scope, which I don't find super useful, but I know people use it. But the more important one is the app context. And basically that is saying, when we're doing it like this, it's saying, basically within, I'm trying to explain without using the same words, within the context of this app, within the scope of all the stuff we've set up for this application, that's the context we're going to be running all this stuff in. In this case, we are going to be in this case, we are going to first get our production table, and we're going to clear it out because if we run our seeds more than once, and we probably will, we don't want to keep appending stuff onto it. So we're going to do a query and delete everything. And then we are going to create some production models, and these are automatically, because we are importing them from here, hooked up to the database. Then we are going to add all those and commit. I don't think there's anything else down here I need to talk about. No, there's not. Great. And so this is just a Python script. It's bringing in the app and the models, but it's just plain old Python. So we should be able to run it by the seed file. Let's see if that works. Let's click the Flask app. Import that. Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 So maybe we don't need to do that then. Hey. Let's see if that actually did anything. Hey, it sure did. So here's all our titles, genre, budget, image, director, description, ongoing yes or no, and all the other stuff. Great. Unlikely Shakespeare's going to be directing that, but it's fine. Cool. So again, this is very similar to the stuff that you did in your projects or last time. It's just using a slightly different syntax. Most of the query stuff is going to be exactly the same, and we'll use that in our thing. So we've got our database set up. This is not we are using the context of the app to do this, but really this is just creating a database, and we could use that with whatever. Uh, Great. So our database is set up. We've seen our stuff in there. Great. And so now let's put it to some good use. How about that? Yeah. The way I think these things are a little weird, so I'm gonna try and do it a different way and see if it works. So I'm gonna turn our yeah, let's do this. Loop. So I'm gonna turn our production route into an actual production route. So instead of just returning that, I'm going to need to remember how to do a query. And so, yeah, prediction. So our route is actually going to be so pluralizing or not the pluralizing. Um, Opinions differ again. I know that in a lot of Python stuff, you'll see a lot of Flask stuff. You'll see the base route look like that, plural, and then whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. And then the item route do like that. Um, that so RESTful is a convention. It's not a again. There's not like a RESTful committee that is making up all the rules. So it's gonna differ from place to place. I like using the same plurality or ordinality, whatever it is, uh, with an S or not, depending on what it is. I like using the same one for all the routes, whether it's the index route or the get route. You will probably see it both ways in different places. Do whichever one you like, whichever works. Or if you have a specification, do that one. So let's go ahead and do a get. So we're gonna need to too much stuff. Um, we're gonna need to get rid of this. Great. So the first thing we need to do is I'm just gonna rename this, or it's gonna be index. It's fine. First thing we need to do is do a query. I'm just gonna do a query. We can say productions equals production query. And that'll get everything, right? Am I missing a step? I might be. We'll see. I'll do a query there. That should get us all the stuff. And that's going to be, in the form of whatever form that model gives the stuff into. So it's not ready to go out into the world yet. We need to use our buddies up here. So let's create a response. Let's create a response. Hey, look at that spoiler, make response. So this is, again, something we're importing from Flask. And this is going to basically take the garbage we give it and make an actual HTTP response out of it. And so we need two parts here. We need the object that we're going to be turning into our stuff that we're sending back. And we're going to need a return code. I don't know if that's 100% required, but I'm going to give it anyway. So let's go ahead and JSONify. And this is, this is stringifying. This is turning our object into a JSON string, and we're going to give it our productions, and then we're going to give it an OK 200 here. And we're just going to return the response. Is that going to work? Who knows? Only one way to find out. I'm not confident about the query, but we'll see if that goes. And I ran the seed again. Good job. Good job, me. Let's run app. Fantastic. Let's go and hit our thing. Oh, you know what? Let's make our little baby root here. Let's just do our Cool. So we get our little helpful. Great there. Make that a little bigger. Awesome. So let's hit that. I'm not confident about this at all, but I'm excited to see what happens. Hey, type error. Index missing one required positional argument title. Yep, don't need that. Cool. Let's try that one more time. Query object is not callable. All. I need to say all, don't I? Object of type production is not JSON serializable. All right. All right. Um, Amazing. So our production does have a string response here. So let's go ahead and I wonder if we can serialize. I bet we can serialize a list of things. Um, don't know. Well, I wonder if we can do that. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do production to string for production in productions. Great. Um, I feel a little bit better about that. Production has no. Is it just 2S? Thinking of a different language. Doesn't. How do we get that then? I thought that would do it, right? How do you get the string representation of something in Python? Uh,
Could you have it just return HTML instead of JSON data?
well, it's just gonna return like this is just gonna be text, right?
Got it.
But I'm just the part I'm kind of wrestling with here is uh, again, I think I'm thinking of a different language. Maybe I just
I think the last one I was looking at was the serialization mixin. It's like a two JSON string thing.
ah yeah. So I just need to turn it into strings. Yeah, that's JavaScript. That's Ruby. This is Python. Okay. So the curse of knowing multiple languages. Cool. So we did it. Here we are. So this is telling us we are grabbing all of the deep reductions and we are doing a little list comprehension. So we're just in another language. This would be a map again. And we could use a map here, but it's more Pythonic to do this. So we're grabbing each production, we're getting the string version of that production, and we're just throwing it in a list and JSONifying that list. And that is represented here by our square bracket friends. And we just have a list of all of we made it look like this. So that's what it looks like. And we got a list of all of our things. We did an index route. Great. What would it look like if we made that look better? So here's the thing. One of the things that you're going to see in a lot of Flask tutorials out in the wilderness is that a lot of people don't use Flask to just return data like we are. A lot of people will use it to return, oh no, return HTML, which is fine, but we're not going to be using it that way because we're going to be using it from a React front end. And we are just going to be making RESTful requests to get data. And so we just want data, which in this case works great because we are just sending back those things. This is, however, Not what we want there. This is just a string, and technically it is data. We are sending a string version of the whole object, but what we would really want to do here would be to create an object for each one and return that list. So we're a little bit over an hour. Um, yeah, we can do one more, just one more. So this is what the actual thing would look like. Let's go ahead and make another. Let's go ahead and make another route, and it's going to be our individual thing route. And let's just make it ID, and it's going to be an integer. Cool. And so let's do our def production. Production, great. ID. And fantastic. So in this case, we are only going to query for one of them. And we are going to put together an actual object that we're going to return from there. So let's do our production. Let's call it P. We're going to say production. We're going to do a query and we're going to filter for production ID equals our double equals our ID. And we just want to get the first one of those. There should only be one, but otherwise it'll give us a list. So we just want the first one. So there's our production called prod. Prod. So that should get us this production object from it. If we do a string, we'll get this kind of thing here. So what we want to do is actually make an actual object out of it. These are not great names, but I'm going to call it them anyway. So here's a production object. And it's going to be a dictionary in Python. And we'll do this. Title is going to be production title. Let's get the genre, and let's get the director. Clearly, whoever made this exercise is not a theater person because those are the authors, not the directors. But here we are. Cool, great, that's that. And so let's make let's JSONify this. So we will, we can just do it one line, I guess. Yeah, we'll make a response. We're going to go to 200 after that. But we are here going to JSONify our prod obj, and then we're going to return that response. Great. So I wonder if this is going to work. So we're doing a query for the production that matches that ID. We're creating an actual object or a dictionary out of just some parts of that, not the whole thing. If we want to do the whole thing, we can do the whole thing, but just it's more typing. And we're going to create a response with make response that we're importing here. We're going to JSONify our dictionary or object here. So that should turn this into something that looks almost exactly like that in our response. And we're going to return it with a 200. Does it work? Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get cats. Cats is the best one there. So we should start the server. Not found. Oh no. Production 2. Production 2. Oh, there we go. Type error. Great. Good. Object of type instrumented attribute is not JSON serial. Really? JSON prod obj is not going to give us a thing. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Why is that not JSON serialable? Serialable. Serialable? serializable. That's um, instrumented attribute. what what is an instrumented attribute? That's not what that is. Um, interesting. Oh, I know what's wrong. We are getting it off of the production here, not off of our one here. Yep, that's what we want. Because we were trying to get the, I don't know, I don't even know what that would be, the instrumented attribute off of the production model object, not off of the query response that we got there. Hey, let's see if that works. Look at that. We got it. Um, great. So if we wanted to forge ourselves a React application that had a drop-down list of productions and made a GET request with the IDs associated with the right thing, we could then make a request to that with the right ID, and we can get back our data in a way that's useful, and then use it to use it in our application. So yeah, that is the basics, which is, looking at it, an awful lot of using our database with Flask. Um, but remember what we had for the basics, right? We import Flask and we make a route that returns a string. That's really all we're doing is building on top of that. That's just a string. That's just a string. How we get to that string, that's all the SQL or Squalchemy stuff that we learned last time. So, and it's just in a slightly different format because we're going through the Flask Squalchemy, and we need to be careful about what we're trying to turn into our responses. But that's just Python. The actual Flask stuff, like this, creating our routes, that part's easy. This is the part that can get a little hairy. Um, yeah, I think that's all I'm going to talk about today. What questions do we have about any of this, if any? I know it is a lot to absorb. Yeah, no shade, no questions.
I have one.
There you go.
Yeah. Similar to last time, like the code seems to starting to make sense. It's the service terminal stuff
Mhm.
that can you just like walk through the steps of getting because there's been a couple times where I thought I was following the instructions, and then it'll show like like if I just let's say I just type in localhost 8,000 and it'll say, yeah, this site can't be reached because I haven't loaded the server or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the part where I'm just like forgetting.
So, I've worked myself to a place where it's easy to start it up, but this was, you saw me working through it. It's so, especially with Python and little virtual environments, that can be tricky. And then, once you get into that there, then you're just running your app, and you can either do it this way or you can type, Python 3 app py, and that'll do the exact same thing. So again, this is just a program. I mean, it's just a script, right? This is a little application. It's all just Python. So just like any other Python application you'd be running, that's how you start this one for the command line. And then all the stuff with like setting up all of the migrations and everything, that sucks. um, uh, and it's different for every framework you're going to use. So the best I can do is say, kind of like go through the steps. Um, and if you get errors, that's where you have to kind of put your detective hat on and say, am I in the right directory? Am I in the right Python environment? Do I, have the right file importing to the right file. Um, did I did I set up the migrations? Did I run the migration? Did I run my seeds? It's kind of it's weird because it's kind of glossed over a little bit. Like we kind of do it and say like, cool, just do that.
Yeah.
And you have to it's picky and you have to get it right to even get started on the actual work. And again, like unless you're someone who's going to be cranking out a different Python up every week, you're going to be doing it once and setting it up, and then doing the actual programming. And so it's hard to get reps on it. I still have to kind of go through the steps by step. Um, I definitely don't have it burned into my memory yet, and I hope never to. Um, but yeah, it's basically just getting comfortable with command line. Um, that's going to serve you no matter what you're working in.
Yeah.
So getting comfortable with command line, getting comfortable with virtual environments, getting comfortable with like what commands and if you've run them or not run them, and just how to read error messages and work backwards from there. And that's the skill that's actually going to translate into stuff you're going to be using for the rest of your life. The particulars of this, this will probably be useless in 5 years or 10 years. So yeah, the important part is the detective work, not the actual things. But we need the actual things to actually work too. So therein lies the problem. I don't know if I've actually helped you or not.
Yeah, well, I just next time I'm going through it and it gets to where it's working, I just need to like write a sticky note of like, okay, which ones did I do that got me here, and I put that on my computer. So like,
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, and you saw me, and that's why I kind of like do this live. I'm going to make mistakes, hopefully, while I'm showing you this. And, you know, part of the value I hope that I'm giving here is that you get to watch me, make mistakes, to maybe reduce the pressure on yourself a little bit, because I've been doing this for a very long time and I still make mistakes every day. But more importantly, the kind of the process that I go through to kind of solve the mistakes, or problems, is like that's the valuable part. I think you can learn this from a book or from a website or whatever. Learning how to debug your shit, like that's the 80% valuable stuff there.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, but that's it. If you do have trouble getting stuff set up, holler at me, post a question in the channel, reach out to someone else, because we're all doing the same thing, and so we're gonna be running into the same problems. Um, cool. What other questions do we have? Guess we don't, so I'm gonna bring us back here. Cool. Yeah, so this is the basics of setting up the server and doing a Git, and grabbing stuff from the database and displaying that in a way. We will be going further into using different HTTP methods to do different things with the database through this. They should be relatively familiar to you because you've kind of done both parts. You've already done a lot of the consumption part from the React side, and you've already done a lot of the CRUD stuff on the database side. And so basically, it's just kind of like plug in the territories together to make a real boy. And we'll be doing that the next couple days to go through all that stuff and see how that works. Yeah. Any other questions before we? You know what? We'll stop this recording and let's just do stand down, instead of coming back in 10 minutes and doing it. Sounds like good. Cool. So last call for questions on this stuff. Awesome. And I'll post this recording up as soon as it goes up. I'll put it in the channel and put it on my playlist, and available for questions anytime. Cool. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to stop the recording now.